keynote. Wendy Bulger became director of Loyola Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship in July of 2018. Her career has spanned public and private sectors, including experiences as an entrepreneur, starting her own firm, managing technology, product development, and launching new initiatives and teams for nonprofit organizations. And before Loyola, she worked at JR Strength as the Director of Program Innovation and Strategy for 3 years from 2015 to 2018. And that is a pretty amazing title right there. Today, Wendy's going to talk about how innovative thinking and having an entrepreneurial mindset can help you create deeper connections with your constituents. She's going to talk about how you can design solutions that truly meet your constituents' needs, how to make smart trade-offs, and how you can build valuable tools through a fun and constituent-centered approach. Before I hand it over to Wendy, just a few housekeeping notes. In the Docs tab next to chat, you'll see the slides for today's session. We hope to have Q&A at the end, and so if you have questions for Wendy, please put them into that Q&A tab so that we can get to them later. Today's audio is obviously being broadcast, through your computer. So if at any point you have any issues with video or audio, just do that old trick of refreshing your screen. And with that, I am going to hand it over to Wendy.
Thank you so much, Christine. I really appreciate it. Hi, everyone. It's great to be on here with you today at BB Dev Days. I want to start with a big thanks to Eric Lever for inviting me, to his whole team, including Christine and Catherine Hall, everybody at Blackbaud, everybody behind this conference, behind BB Dev Days. I'm just really grateful to be asked to be a part of this with you all today, and excited to be with you. You are all the people who are making change happen, and so you're the people who inspire me, and I'm excited to share a little bit with you for the next half hour, 40 minutes along those lines. I have had the privilege of doing a lot of things in my career. You heard a little bit about some of those highlights, but I want to be clear, make sure that you all know that what I've mostly done is worked in nonprofits, and now working in higher ed. So I think, have a background that's very much like the majority of yours. A lot of you I know come from those two fields. I personally identify as an entrepreneur. And what I mean by that is an entrepreneur who works inside other organizations. And we'll be talking about more throughout this talk about what that looks like and what it means to be an entrepreneur or an entrepreneur, which is something I really use interchangeably, just kind of depends on the context. So by the end of this talk, I hope you'll be inspired. I hope you'll have some new ideas about how to lean in on innovation, lean in on entrepreneurship, and how you might discover your own inner entrepreneur, all around the topic of our talk today, and all around this mutual goal that we all have to improve and enhance constituent experiences. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. And thanks again for joining us. It's great to be here with you. So if you're looking at the slide deck, you're probably wondering about that picture there. That's a hanger in my office on the back of my door. If you were to drop into my office, I wish I could invite you all in here. I think there's too many of you right now. The clicker's saying 520. Eric says he's not sure if that number is really right, but way too many for my office right now. But if you were to come individually, I would take your coat, I would hang it on that hanger on the back of my door. That hanger is a relic from my grandfather's business. My grandfather was a founder, an entrepreneur. He started Ray Bulger's Clothiers. And he was what they used to call a haberdasher in my hometown in Portland, Oregon. So I keep that hanger in my office to remind me of why I do the work I do right now, which is supporting entrepreneurs, many of whom are really quite similar to who my grandfather was. So it's a reminder to me. And then it's also a conversation starter. So we're going to talk a little bit about the use of touchstones like this hanger. And this is going to lead me to my first piece of advice in this introduction here before we even get started. I'm going to give you guys, drop in 4 tips that I have for you today, 4 little pieces of advice. So My first one is that you also include in your office space, wherever you work, include these kind of touchstones, include inspirations, decorate your space with these. Maybe it's a souvenir from a field visit, if you've had a chance to do that. Anything you have that reminds you of why you do the work you do and who your constituents really are. Who are these people you're serving? We get pretty detached sometimes from who our end users might be. We just work behind a screen or working in an office every day. So in the previous job, as another example, a different sort of hanger that I had that I hung my ideas onto was actually a picture of a constituent. And I used to put it right up on my computer screen. I taped it to the side of my screen so that when I was writing marketing copy for my job, and if I got writer's block, I just looked at that picture and I looked at this constituent who I knew, and I wrote to her. I wrote the copy to her. So it was a great inspiration to have this kind of talisman or inspiration. Now, your constituents might actually not be so far away. They might be internal, which is amazing. And that makes your job of keeping them front of mind a lot easier. But I just stress here that you make an effort to do that. So make sure you go into the office when other people are there. Make sure you schedule some time when you're not on a meeting or a call, and you go out and spend time at the water cooler or in the cafeteria, go to meetings in person. Even if you're virtual, make sure that you're making time to see your internal constituents on Zoom and other places. So you can feel connected through these kinds of items. The touchstones like my hanger can also be conversation starters. And that leads me to tip number 2. And the tip number 2 is use conversation, use stories to open up about yourself and your own personal history. If you do that, you model for other people. You encourage those you're talking to also open up to you. So if you're doing this in conversation with constituents, that ultimately creates deeper conversations with your constituents. You're going to learn more about them and from them, and in the end, you're going to serve them better. So especially if you might have lived experience shared with your constituents, that can be very powerful and a powerful thing to share. For me personally, I've already shared that I come from an entrepreneurial family. You know about my grandpa's business. Tell you that I also know the downside of coming from an entrepreneurial family. Businesses go bust. Bankruptcy is a very common part of the entrepreneurial experience. You might have noticed that the haberdashery business is not so common anymore. And so like many of his colleagues in business, Ray Bolger Clothiers is no longer open. And as a result, my family fell on hard times for several years. And as a kid, I had free school meals and I was on food stamps in our family. So much later, when I worked at Share Our Strength and I worked on the No Kid Hungry campaign, I shared that story often with my constituents. So we're talking about public school kids, lunch ladies who worked in the cafeteria, school principals. When I was able to share my own story, my own lived experience, it really opened up the conversations with constituents. All right, so now you will know a little bit more about me personally. You know about why I care about supporting entrepreneurs and their families. I want to do a little bit more of a formal introduction as we close out this section of the talk. As we've said already, I've done a lot of things over the years. I worked in tech. I started my own firm. I worked for a small business. Now, surprise, I'm in higher ed. Not sure I ever expected to find myself here. The only sector I haven't worked in, and right now I'm saying phew on that one, is I have not worked in government, which is going to be a pretty challenging place to be right now. The nonprofits you might know, Save the Children, Share Our Strength, Mercy Corps, National Democratic Institute for International Affairs. I've had National Geographic Society and Smithsonian as clients. Big names, you might know all of them. But I want you to know that I've also, as an intern, as a board member, as a volunteer, been involved with lots of smaller nonprofits, smaller schools. So wherever all of you work, I want you to know that I've been there. I know that there are cultural differences in these different types of organizations. There are differences in the kind of resources available to us, depending on where we sit. But what we do have all in common is our passion and our commitment to our mission. And that's the same, in my experience, across all all of the different micro sectors within our field. So I myself am not a PhD, which is part of why I never expected to work in higher ed. But I do believe that outsiders like us, that folks who define themselves as entrepreneurs, can really deliver a lot of value in higher ed and other places where there might be a little bit less expected. As an example, last year, I received the Baltimore Educator of the Year award. So I'm not a PhD or a teacher, but I was named Educator of the Year. In addition, our team was recognized last year with a first place in an international award for excellence in entrepreneurial teaching and pedagogical innovation. So those were big breakthroughs and great honors to receive. And that brings me to tip number 3 that I want to share with all of you, which is that even if you have a non-traditional background, even and maybe especially if you don't come from the place where everyone thinks they're going to find you, you can be a really important contributor to an institution and a real force of innovation. So, tip number 3 sort of concludes with my advice to you, which is not to let anyone tell you that you don't belong, regardless of your credentials, right? And in fact, you can really make a significant difference. I've actually been here at Loyola in my role as the founding director of the Simon Center for Innovation Entrepreneurship. I've been here 7 years. I have never worked anywhere else this long. So I'm very surprised to find myself here 7 years later. But I will tell you that we did not get awards and recognition in our first few years. So my last piece of advice for this section to close us out here is a bit of a warning to entrepreneurs. You will have to keep pushing, and you will also have to learn patience. So sometimes it takes some time for your ideas and your innovation to come to fruition. But I recommend again, keep working on it, keep coming up with new things, but know that, sometimes other people will take a little time to catch up with you. But I promise you they will get there, especially if you make sure to stay close to your constituents, right? All right, so to close this out, I want to make sure to invite you all to Brain Dates, which is a part of your conference. If you haven't checked out this platform, strongly encourage you to see what you can find there. It's a place where you can experiment with conversations like I just shared with you here. You can do storytelling. You can practice your own stories, share your life experiences. It's a great place to do some connecting and just see what you can learn out of Brain Dates. So if you haven't been there yet, please go check it out. All right. So moving on, we're going to get started and talking about developing your inner entrepreneur and intrapreneur. We're going to talk about these 4 different areas: the mindset, innovative thinking, identifying co-conspirators, and the 5 principles of effectuation, which I think you're going to really like. That's the first half. In the second half, we're going to get into models and exercises that are more practical that you can try. And as we said, we have time for Q&A at the end. All right, the entrepreneurial mindset. We promised we'd talk about that. It's part of the advertising for this talk. But what does that even mean? It's like a lot of big words that maybe don't mean anything, which is totally fair. So we're going to break it down a little bit. Luckily, we have NIFTY. Isn't that funny? NFTE, NIFTY. It's the Network for Teaching Entrepreneurship. Okay, so NIFTY says, quote, an entrepreneurial mindset is a set of skills that enable people to identify and make the most of opportunities, overcome and learn from setbacks, and succeed in a variety of settings. That definition seems to me to be pretty basic, and honestly, who wouldn't want to have those skills, right? So these are skills that we all aspire to, and really that apply in any job description, any kind of mindset. So skills that enable people to identify, make the most of opportunities, learn from setbacks, and succeed in a variety of settings. What you didn't hear was entrepreneurial mindsets about starting a business. It's about a startup. It's about venture capital. It's about tech bros. It's about dropping out from college and building tech in a garage. None of that, and according to this definition, is what is represented by entrepreneurship. So we're doing some myth busting here when we talk about what really is an entrepreneurial mindset. So if you go around the circle, we can see initiative and self-reliance. I think anybody who works in this sector has that. Future orientation. This is an interesting, very strategic mindset where you're not thinking all the time about what happened in the past. You're thinking towards the future. One of my favorite quotes around this is from Wayne Gretzky, the hockey player. He's coming up later again in this talk for whatever reason. He has some good quotes. He said famously, "I skate to where the puck is going to be, not where it's been." Right? So that is the future orientation that eventually when we get really good at our jobs, we learn how to be where the puck is going, right? Looking towards the future. Flexibility and adaptability is so important in these uncertain times. Moving around the circle here, opportunity recognition, a new donor, a new program. We're always, on the lookout, right, for some new recognition. Communication and collaboration. This is all about teams, and so important for that. Critical thinking, more strategic issues. Creativity and innovation. That is one where you might, characteristically, we expected to see that one here, right? The last one, comfort with risk. A lot of us will say this is maybe a myth that doesn't belong here. We'll talk more about that when we get to effectuation, and suggest that you don't have to be comfortable with risk, and it's really about managing the downside and managing the risk. So I just want to argue that this mindset is important for everyone. Can be entrepreneurs. And one final note, when we're doing this sort of comparison into the corporate sector or the start, from really early stage startups in some cases, because what they have in common is this resource scarcity. And what that scarcity does is leads to creativity, which is an important part of that wheel. Okay, so let's think about innovation in this way that suggests. My friend Candace Chance came up with this analysis of how you innovate. And she suggests there are 5 different ways that we can be. You might have 1 or 2 of these, and you might think, who has some of these other traits. So thinkers or idea generators, that's kind of the most stereotypical description. They're at the front of the curve. They're doing things differently. They take ideas from the thinkers. They turn them into reality. They can thrive in rapid change. We have improvers. They're taking something that already exists. They're making it better. This is also innovation. This is also so important. So are the producers. And you see there, they often dominate in technical skills. So I'm thinking that a lot of the folks in this audience might identify in that producer category. They can lock in and they can move forward. Finally, we have connectors who have this exceptional ability to bring people together. They are people motivated, they like to collaborate, and they make sure that the group is healthy. So these are the 5 definitions of ways we can be innovative. I hope that you might see yourself in some of these. I believe we have a poll here for you all. If you want to fill that out and let us know of these 5 descriptions, which 1 or 2 are most like you? Do you guys see it? I'm going to fill that out.
Wendy, it's Eric. I'm gonna put a poll in the chat. I don't have it live here in the backstage. My apologies.
If the poll isn't working, we can also just have folks put things in the chat. Christine, is that a good idea? Yeah, okay. So yeah, I'm seeing some producers. That's what I thought. Great. I'm personally a builder and a connector. Those are the things that resonate for me. There's another builder I see there, Kelly. Another connector. Hi to you guys. Oh, wonderful. I love that you all are seeing yourselves there. All right, great. So my goal in sharing these definitions is to suggest that whether or not you're defining this way now as an innovator and entrepreneur, you likely have a lot of these qualities. And you can grow these qualities and descriptions in yourself. The other thing is you can find others to team with who help you fill in the gaps. So we're talking next about co-conspirators. And as you look for co-conspirators, keep an eye out for candidates who are complementary to you on this list. So let's move on to talking about these co-conspirators. Look at these adorable Despicable Me characters. I saw you guys had a dance party before we started talking, and I saw there were some Despicable Me dancers. So thanks for contributing those in the chat at the beginning. I'm bringing them back to talk about not conspiracy theories, or we're not talking about Area 51, we're not talking about Illuminati, but we are talking about these adorable folks who are partners in crime, who are up for shenanigans, and who have your back 24/7. Okay, so co-conspirators help you focus on advancing a cause. They are mission aligned with your organization and with your own personal mission. When we think of co-conspirators, the phrase that comes to mind is that each party has skin in the game. So you are looking in a co-conspirator, you are looking for a partner to work with together, who is a person who is not only willing to face the consequences, but they expect to face the consequences, all right? And that's where that partner in crime element comes in. So in addition to Despicable Me, right, another example that I've seen cited quite a bit in literature about these topics comes out of the Obama White House in 2016. Women were only about a third of senior aides and advisors. So according to the Washington Post at that time, female staffers adopted a meeting strategy they called amplification. When a woman made a key point in a meeting, other women would repeat it, giving credit to its author. This forced everyone in the room to recognize the contribution and denied them the chance to claim the idea as their own. So this was a conspiracy, right, of a group of women leaders who were partners to each other in ensuring that each other's voices were heard and their opinions were heard, and they worked together to achieve that common mission. So I'm going to suggest, as you go out and look for co-conspirators, look outside of your department. Sometimes partnering with other folks outside of your normal realm, even individuals who are in other organizations outside of your own organization, is a great way to get started with building different alternative types of teams. That way you build your track record before anyone internally will agree to experiment with you or to agree to get into shenanigans with you. Sometimes you need to go outside first, and then later you recruit your conspirators or your partners from inside. If you are interested in using the conference to get started with this right now, perfect timing. BB Dev Days has this hackathon going already. So whether you have your own project or whether you want to join in on somebody else's, this is a great place in the hackathon space for you to find partners in crime, build future teams, and also just make that recognition that we all need to make, that we can't do it all by ourselves, right? So we need each other. We need to work together. Okay, this is our last slide about the inner entrepreneur, but this might be the most important one. So let's get into effectuation. And effectuation is also known as the entrepreneurial method. And it's something that lies dormant in each of us. We are not born, but we can all learn. We can all learn to use or to behave with effectuation. And I'm going to read it to you. I need to make it bigger. Effectuation is a way of thinking and decision making that is based on the idea entrepreneurs create their future. There's that future again. They create their future by taking action and making things happen. It is focused on creating opportunities. Doesn't that sound familiar from the mindset? Creating opportunities and solving problems, we're getting that again, by using the resources available to you, rather than making predictions and trying to plan for the future. Okay. So effectuation is the most researched theory of entrepreneurship, and it busts a lot of myths about who entrepreneurs are and how they act. And so it's very empowering for those of us who are, again, non-traditional. You know, we're not doing a startup in our garage. Most people might not call us entrepreneurs, but really we live, many of us, within this the principles of effectuation. So I'm going to quickly blow through these. And we also have a link that hopefully we can put in the chat if you want to do more on this. There's a video by Sarah Sarasvathy, is the academic who came up with this effectuation theory. So we start with means, bird in hand, great description of that. The means are the things that you already have. So we always think, oh, I need a bunch of money, or, oh, I need to have, this network that I don't have yet. But in fact, we all have means. It might be our identity. It might be our competencies that we have. These are the most valuable things that it takes to be an entrepreneur. The super entrepreneur is the person who can open up the fridge when it comes to dinner time, see what's in the fridge. Those are their means, right? What do you have already? And create a delicious meal. All right. That is as distinguished from the person who goes to the store, has a shopping list, has a recipe, buys a thing for the recipe. Nothing wrong with that. You can probably make a great meal, but you have to have money. You have to have transportation to the store. You have to have a store nearby. You have to have time, all these things. And the reality is we have so many means right here already. Open up the fridge, see what you can find. So we want to focus early on when we're coming up with new things on means, not goals. It's what we make of our means that defines our success. Affordable loss is a different way of thinking about risk. And it's basically saying, what can you afford to lose? So you define from the beginning what kind of failure is acceptable, how much money you can lose, how to fail early, and how to make that all acceptable. So entrepreneurs are not immune to risk. It's not that they don't feel the risk. They feel it arguably more than many of us, but they also early on understand how to manage it and where the lines are and how to make sure that they don't lose their shirts. All right. Next one, co-creation partnership. This may be the most important of the principles of effectuation. And this is really about those co-conspirators. This is going out and creating with other people, right? Jointly coming together with folks who also have ideas. So it's not about slicing up the pie. It's not even about growing the pie, which we talk about a lot in nonprofits, right? As we think about co-creation, the pie hasn't even been baked yet, all right? Let's get together with other people. Let's make an amazing different pie that nobody's ever tasted. You noticed a lot of these examples in effectuation are about cooking. So that might be a little bit me, and it's also a little bit Professor Sarasvathy who came up with it. She's a great cook. All right, make lemons out of lemonade. We've all heard this all our lives. This is something we all need to learn how to do. Again, especially in times like right now, we're all doing this. We're all showing examples of that. Finally, worldview. This is about not trying to predict, which is hard. You can never really predict what's going to happen in the future. You want to be building that plane. You want to be creating that future, making your own future, taking responsibility for your own future. So I hope you like effectuation. I hope you can see again in this model parts of yourself, things that you might do or things that you might start doing, picking up in the future. All right, so we are shifting now to the second half of the talk. Time is moving along, and I want to make sure that we get to some of the more practical elements and examples of how to design solutions, how to use innovation entrepreneurship to help us make trade-offs. So the examples are going to be how to use trial and options, how to use customer discovery, which comes out of the lean methodology, and this really fun exercise called Buy a Feature, which comes out of human-centered design. You guys ready? All right. We're going to start with trial and options. So look at this. I opened up the BBW's website. I opened up the, where to subscribe, where to sign up, and I saw that they are an absolute model. They are a great example of experimentation and using trial and designing solutions that have a lot of options. So when your product or service is online, there are so many ways that you can test what your constituents value and what they want the most. And this is a great way to do it. Give them options, give them choices. 3 different types of passes are up here. We don't know what folks are willing or able to spend. Let's give them a choice. We'll learn by how folks buy, what their purchasing process is. We will learn what's in their budget and how much they value our conference. So Blackbaud's done an amazing job in using trial. The other thing you can do is A/B testing. So if you don't want to put too much information out there on one screen, right, you have two different screens, different people, get different options, see which one is most popular. The reason you want to do this is to try to move away from what happens so much in our organizations, which is that groupthink, where you get in a meeting and there's somebody who has a really loud voice, or somebody who's really high up in the chain, or for whatever reason is very influential, and they get to make the decision, and that may or may not be the best decision for your constituents. So if you can create options like this, you will learn more and get closer to what your constituents really want. All right, the next idea is customer discovery. And we can substitute the word constituent for customer here. That really works regardless of your language. So customer discovery is the bedrock of innovative new venture development. And it's all about talking to humans, all right? So at its core, it is talking to people, real constituents, sponsors, stakeholders, whoever they are, whatever you call them. If you can interview them, if you can do something face-to-face, is ideal. Virtual can work, but being able to connect in real time with a real customer with the goal of understanding their problem and gaining valuable insights. So you want to get creative as you go out to do customer discovery and setting up interviews. Don't just ask your friends and family, all right? You probably know what they're going to say. So expand your circle and see if you can set up interviews to get feedback from a wider set. The goal of speaking with customers is not to just validate your own existing ideas. For example, if this doctor were to say to the patient, I think we're going to go with antibiotics. What do you think of antibiotics? All right. Or if you were to say, here's our new app. What do you think? The goal is to gain a deeper understanding of the actual pain point, right? So ideally, this doctor in her discovery process is saying, well, when did this start? Where exactly is the pain? Do you have any history with this kind of pain, right? Digging down into what the pain is so that we can understand this at a more root level. This term, customer discovery, was coined by Steve Blank as a part of the lean startup methodology. Let me also make sure to point out that this is not a focus group. I have a couple stories about focus group. I don't think we're going to have time. Maybe if we have time later, I can tell you about the downsides of focus groups. But I would try this instead in order to make sure that, again, you don't fall prey to groupthink and that you don't have the same voices being amplified all the time, which is a risk that can happen, both in a focus group and also in a survey. All right, lots of times we send out surveys and people will tell us things that may or may not be what they actually think. So there are some risks here. Which is why I love, and this is sort of our last topic here, I love buy a feature. This comes from Luma. It comes out of human-centered design, and it's an exercise that helps organizations identify what customers value the most. So you work directly with constituents, and it helps put those of us who have limited resources, it helps us put into perspective, which features to prioritize, all right, by using this approach. So it's a means of market research, but you're dealing directly with your potential future customers or your constituents. So I had the pleasure several summers ago of working with a co-conspirator, Dr. Suzanne Kielsen. You can see her over on the right-hand side. She's an engineering professor, and she ran this program called Beat the Streets. So these were Baltimore middle and high school wrestlers. They were doing a wrestling program, and they also got engineering and product design and financial education out of this program. So we ran this by a feature. The students behind the desk on the left were selling their ideas and their features. The rest of us on the right were telling them we didn't use Monopoly money. Monopoly money is great, poker chips are great. In this case, we just used sort of like a credit card or Venmo type tally. But by using those dollars, we would vote for what features we thought were most important. So this is a great way to build trust and build familiarity and get engagement and input from your partners or your constituents. So you can see here what the purchase sheet looks like. These students were developing, again, a new athletic facility, and they had to decide, were they going to include a coach's office? Were they going to include a film room? Was there a big screen? What things belonged in this athletic facility? And you can see they described them on the little blue stickies below. And they even changed the prices as they developed their idea of what these features would be. So that's what the sort of sales sheet looks like. And then at the end, after all the negotiation, and these kids were really good at negotiation, they really jumped into it. I've never seen this workshop take off in the way it did with our Beat the Streets kids. But at the end, they did a tally. And so they found out that, the sauna at 300, it also sold at 100. This was one of the top inclusions to include in the athletic facility. So when people vote with their real dollars, what they prioritize. So you can do this to design features of your website or any other communications you're designing. You can also do buy a feature to design your own programming, your products, your services. Find out what people prioritize. Even if you don't charge for your services, this process, this game, still helps you see how your offerings are prioritized and how they're valued by your constituents. So that is the last example that I have today of how to use solutions through entrepreneurship, through innovation, to get closer to your constituents. And I'm happy to say we've got some time now to feature some questions and have some conversation. I'd love to hear what's on everybody's mind as we've gone through this handful of slides. And I think Christine's going to join me to help identify a couple of those questions from you all. Christine, I think you're muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, just a little bit of a delay there. Amazing presentation. I was lucky enough to kind of get a preview the other week, and still so inspired by this. So if you have questions, put them in the Q&A. We'll try to get to as many as possible in the last few minutes. So we have a few questions here too, kind of similar about, do you have a real life example of this kind of like buy a feature in nonprofits, potentially with donors, and, how people might think about it in the context of their work?
Yeah, well, again, that Beat the Streets, that was real. So that was a room full of high school students. To use it with donors, I'm not sure. It's possible, but it's not really about like auctioning off like real, like a donation or a gift. It's more, sort of an allegory for how people value, again, a product or a feature or a service. So I would, what I would do if you want to engage with donors is bring some of your beneficiaries, the folks who ultimately you work with, together with some of your staff, together with some of your donors. Mix up all those stakeholders together to get involved with something like this, and then offer them, right, some options. Like, what if we were to do a new program, and just like BB Dev Days did, there's option A, B, and C, right? Which would you pay more for? Which are you more interested in? And the dynamics between, the donors getting to know some of the end users, the staff getting to see everyone, and really being in the same room, seeing how people respond. There's so much that happens there in that real-time interaction. And that's what makes the tool really powerful. And again, different from a focus group. Christine, do you want me to tell some of my focus group stories, or tell me, or are there some pressing questions? Because
I think if you can do it quickly, and then we have some other questions.
So real quick, I was in a focus group when I was 10 years old. I was asked to review. I was in New York City. I was asked to come and watch a TV show. And I was so excited. I was in New York. I got to go to NBC offices. I got to preview a TV show. I loved it. I gave it all 10s for everything. And I said, I'm going to watch this show, every week when it comes on. So they ran the TV show and I watched it at home, months later. And it was terrible. Okay. So actually watching it at home, it was terrible. And they canceled it, within a couple of months. So I've had that experience. I've also been on the other side of focus groups where when I worked at Intel, we paid very fancy, very expensive marketing firms to do focus groups for us. And again, I would say I saw a lot of groupthink. I saw a waste of money. I'm not saying it can't be done well. I'm sure there are folks who are doing it well. But I do think that there are other ways to get that kind of information that I would recommend first.
Yeah. Okay. If we have a question about, do you have any specific tips for building your team or identifying and engaging co-conspirators? How can you find those people?
You do have to get out there. So a little bit of it is like taking opportunities to present or to get in front of people so people know you're there, right? And know to come to you or know that there might be kindred spirits. But I would say get curious about, again, the people you're working with or people in the field who you're interested or excited in. Read all the books. Don't feel shy. You know what? Actually, that's a great segue to my last slide. I mean, we can talk to the extent where we still have time, but you actually do have to kind of take a risk if you're going to start meeting other people, putting yourself out there, looking for co-conspirators. It does mean that you are, volunteering to do something different and to lead some change. And I would encourage everyone, you can do it in baby steps, but to start moving in that direction. And to me, this is the very best quote that there is about taking action as an entrepreneur or an entrepreneur. And that is, you miss 100% of the shots that you don't take. So go ahead and take a shot. What do you have to lose? See what happens if you ask somebody for coffee. See what happens if you ask someone a probing question. That is the first step in meeting up with a co-conspirator. The very best advice I ever heard from a mentor about learning from innovation and user-centered design is when you are stuck, go to the user. So go to your constituents. When you don't know what to do next, go to them, let them lead you. Ask them, observe them, get to know them. So those are my last couple of pieces of advice for everybody. And I don't play hockey at all, but I think the metaphor works, and that we all need to take the shots that we can.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And I know, that I saw some chatter in the chat too, of people who have found their co-conspirators in Blackbaud community as well. So that is a great place if you're looking for co-conspirators, outside of your organization, in addition to inside of your organization. Well, I think we're at just about time. So Wendy, again, thank you so much for sharing all of your experience and expertise with us. We really appreciate it. Again, everyone, you'll have access to the recording, and the slides are in the docs tab as well. So you can go back through the slides too. And we hope you enjoy the rest of your day at BB Dev Days.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Christine. Great to talk to you all. Appreciate your time and energy. Thanks for all the great gifts.
All right.